Welcome to the Beer Taster's Notebook, the show focused on beer education. I'm Jonathan Thompson, Advanced Cicerone, BJCP beer judge, and fermentation enthusiast. Welcome back to the Beer Taster's Notebook, episode 24, where we take a slight break from yeast and dive into the pleasures of drinking beer. So I've been working on this yeast enzyme episode, and it's been a bit of a challenge to get deep enough to make it meaningful, but not to go so far off the rails that it just becomes 2 hours of nonsense. I could do one that's like 5 minutes long, just an overview, and maybe that's prudent. Maybe I'll just do that. But I also think I might just keep working on it and get to a reasonable length without going nuts. Either way, it's not ready, so we're going to take a little break and move into something else. I wanted to try something. So I have some opinions on glassware, which I can back up with science, storage, serving, et cetera, et cetera. I have a bunch of articles on these topics, but I'm getting a little blocked on the general one as to how to pour beer properly and use proper glassware. So I'm going to pause right now, and then I'm going to hit record and then just go full stream of consciousness. And so I have a general idea of what I want to talk about. And I'll edit out pauses, or if I choke on some airborne yeast or something and have a coughing fit. But otherwise, I'm just going to do this all in one take. And it's kind of like what I do anyways, but I do edit out the ums and ahs and all that kind of stuff. And so let's see what happens. But the idea here is I want to use this as the basis for the written article. And so I'll take the transcript after and then edit it. It's a bit of an experiment. So either you're welcome or sorry. So this episode 24 on how to pour beer properly. Okay, so I'm a glass half full kind of guy. It's not optimism versus pessimism or anything. It's just, beer drinking, in a great beer drinking versus mediocre beer drinking. And so I've written a series of articles sort of espousing the virtues of a glass half full. Maybe I should have called my stuff the glass half full instead of the Beer Taster's Notebook, but here we are. And so let's talk about what I mean by this. So normally when you go to a bar and order a beer, they pull out a pint glass, or if you're super unlucky, you'll get a shaker pint. They fill it most of the way to the top and then finish it with about a centimeter of foam. This is sort of the standard. It's fine, but it's not really great. First off, you want way more foam than what they're generally serving. And actually, I was in a place recently where the guy submerged the tap right into the beer and then pushed all the foam out the top, so it was zero. It was very off-putting. Whether you think you like it or not, you do need more foam than you're generally getting served. And secondly, just these glasses are really a subpar way to enjoy beer. The shaker pint's a terrible glass. Pint glasses are terrible glasses. So let's talk about glassware before we get into the serving sizes. So beer glassware comes is really steeped in tradition. And in Belgium, for example, the beer is shown so much respect that if the branded glass is not available, they just won't serve you the beer. There's just, you have to pick another one. So if you went in and ordered, Westmalle Double, then they don't have that glass or it's not clean, then you're going to have to pick something else. It's interesting. I mean, maybe it's a bit annoying, but I think it's kind of nice that they hold on to that. In Köln or Cologne, depending on whether you lean German or French, the resident beer there is called Kölsch. It's very similar to things like a cream ale or blonde ale. It's basically a lagered ale. Anyways, it comes in a 200 milliliter tall cylindrical glass called the Stange. And alt beer, which is the pride of Dusseldorf, it's only about 14 minutes away from Köln. And it's a much different beer, though. And that's served in a sort of a similar glass. Although, depending on the source, it's either a Stange or they use a shorter and wider glass called a Becher. I'll have to see for myself because the information is very conflicting. So off to Germany, I'll have to go. Anyways, sticking with Germany, the Helles lagers are served in Steins or Mauskrugs. English bitters come in a tulip pint, and the English milds come in dimpled mugs, and so on and so forth. So this is all kind of nice, right? Special vessels. Oh, that's quite a nice glass that you've just given me, and we're sticking with tradition. But special vessel, that's going to be the name of my glassware company that I'm just making up. Special vessels steeped or just kissed by tradition, unique to each style with little to no compromise. That's fine, but there's a major issue. So all these glasses are mostly terrible, and the fill level is also less than ideal. And let's get into what I mean by that. So let's talk about the glasses. Let's talk about the beverage first. So beer and wine are pretty complex beverages full of volatile aromatic compounds. These volatiles, via swirling carbon dioxide or just general volatilization, can lift from the liquid and into the air. And this is where the flavor comes from. So in case you're new here, plug your nose, chew on a jelly bean with your nose plugged, then swallow and unplug. You'll detect sweetness or sourness or whatever's actual taste is in the jelly bean, but no flavor until the nose comes into play. So as soon as you unplug your nose, you'll get a rush of air, and then all of a sudden you can identify whether it's lime or cherry or whatnot. And this works with anything, but the accepted test is a jelly bean, and I'm not going to challenge that. So with a cylindrical glass, which most beer glasses are in some way, but the volatiles simply just run for the exit. And so if you think about a wine glass, the top tapers in, and this narrowing bottlenecks, pardon the pun, and the exit, and then traps the volatiles into glass. So this is good. It's our beer or wine, and those precious molecules belong to us, right? And so the conclusion here is that a glass whose top half tapers in is vastly superior to a glass where it does not. I personally love teku glasses, but it's partly because of the shape and the way that it also flares out at the top, so it sort of floods the mouth. Anyways, it's probably just because I really like how they look. So a wine glass works very well as well. There's a bunch of options there. There's some Belgian chalices that kind of curve in at the top. They're kind of like look like a stout wine glass. The tulip shape, so it's a stem and then it comes up and flares out and then flares back in and flares back out again. Those will work quite well. Worst case scenario, just use a wine glass. And so getting back to sort of the half full business. So when's the last time you can remember seeing someone fill a wine glass to the very top, or drink wine from a cylindrical glass for that matter? So I know it does happen, and there are definitely areas in Southern Europe where someone may serve a small water glass of cool table wine just as a refresher. Probably comes from a garden hose or a big jug or something. And it's kind of like drinking beer from the bottle, right? So it's done. It serves a purpose. It's not the norm though. So let's move on here. So I'm not disparaging anyone's choices, by the way. If you want to drink from the bottle, that's your business. I mean, hell, you can drink wine from the bottle if you like. I don't care, but we're differentiating a bit here. So we're speaking specifically about people who want the beer in a glass, who get nervous when the server submerges the faucet in the beer. I mean, unless it's a beer engine or a side pull or something. And people who drink wine from a glass with a stem, which is, most people, right? And so let's talk about the stem a little bit here. The stem, so beer is complex. You may have heard me say that before. Pale, low ABV lagers should be quite cold. Pilsner should be fairly cold. Bitters should be cellar temperature, so like 11 degrees Celsius. Imperial stout should be a little warmer at about 13 degrees Celsius. And so the more complex the beer, the warmer it should be. None of this is really warm, by the way. It's just not ice cold. There's an article on the beertastersnotebook.com and on Substack, which, by the way, is easier to subscribe to. The host provider I use for the website, like the subscriptions never work. I have to manually send out everything, and then half the time they don't go out. So if you want to subscribe and get articles in your inbox, beertastersnotebook.substack.com. There's going to be a link in the show notes too, but there's tons of articles on there. I try and put something out multiple times a week. Anyways, there's an article there on serving temperatures and the ideal temperature for each beer, or a bunch of beers anyways, and then of course why and how, etc. So by using a glass where your hands need to come into contact directly with the glass, you have no control over temperature. And so a stem is going to allow for diversity in hand positioning. So if you need it cold, you hold the stem. If you need it warmer, you hold the bowl. It also looks way cooler, by the way, to hold a glass by the stem and swirl it around. And it makes for more dexterous swirling as well. So, I mean, we shouldn't let all the wine people have all the fun. That's my position here. Okay, so I know that we haven't really got to the root of this yet, and I really don't believe in burying the lead either. You might notice that my style of writing is to answer the question as quickly as possible and then show my work after, so to speak, which might be why I was such a bad student in school, and perhaps maybe why many editors choose to just ghost me. Anyways, I don't care. TLTR is a real thing, and clickbait is a stain on writing as a profession as far as I'm concerned. So I'll answer your questions as quickly as I can, and then we can get to the whys and the hows after. And so, okay, so I guess you just had to listen to me for however long it's been before we even got to this, but the sort of main course. But, oh man, I just can't stop talking now. Okay, so we've talked about volatiles in wine. Headspace matters. Filling the glass all the way allows precisely zero space for the aromatics to mix and mingle and react and form agreeable aromas. So the beer taster would want to swirl the glass, releasing these, have them collect in that tapered area, get their nose right in there, draw them up into the olfactory epithelium, and send resulting strong signals to the brain and assembling a flavor image, right? This is why wine glasses are never filled to the rim. And, don't start with, oh, it's a bigger glass and wine has higher ABV and they couldn't responsibly fill it. They could easily use a smaller glass. Also, it would make their hands look bigger. So I know at least one person on planet Earth who desperately wants the illusion their hands are bigger. Although that being said, the person doesn't drink wine or incidentally water, it seems. Moving on. So that's the main reason. So it's simple, it's practical, and it's science. It's kind of uncomfortable too, right? So the reason for the death of foam, which by the way is super important, is that the drinker feels ripped off, right? You don't want to go in and order a pint and then get a third of it being foam. You paid for beer and you want beer. And that's fine, but foam is part of the beer. So we need to sort of get over this. We're also just so accustomed to it, right? So it's going to look wrong. If you walk into a place and order a beer and they give you half a glass, you're going to feel ripped off, but it's also just going to look weird. It won't, because eventually we're going to, we're not, because probably no one's going to listen to me, but eventually we're going to get to the point, hopefully, where this is the norm and wine and beer is sort of treated with equal respect. I also recognize that we can't really do much about this in the wild. You walk into a bar and ask them to pour you a third of a pint in a wine glass and to charge a third of the price, and many conversations and reactions might follow, but none of them are probably going to be the result we want. But at home, it's quite easy, right? So before I finish here, there's a few more reasons I want to talk about why you should use a stemmed glass with a tapered bowl and only fill it halfway. So the headspace is the main thing, but in summer, beer will go skunky. In winter too, but like the UV light reacts with the hop acids and forms 3-methyl-2-butene-1-thiol, 3-MBT, and it smells like the backside of Pepe Le Pew. This reaction can happen in minutes, depending on the beer. And so sitting out on a hot, sunny patio, which with a cold beer, which is, of course, that's just heaven on earth, it's just a guarantee for a nose full of skunk in a matter of minutes. And so what we can do, we can't control, obviously, what the bars do, but we can do this ourselves. And if it's a pour your own beer situation, then you do have control. Just keep the can by you. And maybe if I campaign hard enough, we can control this. But right now, let's assume that you can only do this at home. You keep the beer in the can, pour a third into the glass, maybe halfway, but I would say a third is probably less, a third is less, but less is probably better when trying to avoid the skuncation here. So this will keep it colder too, by the way, if the temperature, you want the temperature to be low. So, a not so revolutionary idea too is maybe split it amongst friends. So if I have two of my friends over, we just take one beer, split it into three, and then obviously we get no skunk. We don't get oxidation to the same degree, and we all get to enjoy beer together. So win, 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 win. Anyway, so more headspace also means more room for more foam. And this is excellent if you want to control the head. So if you want big or little, if you want a big giant glass of foam, you've got lots of space there. You still want to leave some air at the top, of course. So I think that's basically where I'm going to leave it. A stemmed glass tapers in at the top, fill it only halfway, and that allows for control over foam, temperature control, less skunking, and the most important thing, you get way more flavor out of it. So I think that I'm going to leave it there. I'm not sure how well this worked out. I feel like it worked out pretty well. I feel like I'm about to lose my voice because I haven't stopped. But keep an eye out for the article. We'll see what happens with that. And until next time, stay thirsty, stay curious, and only fill your glass halfway.